Good morning, fathers and daughters. This is FMB Martin, and welcome to Grow Dad YouTube channel. This is another live stream, fathers of daughters. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All fathers are welcome, regardless of your ethnic group, background, and/or culture. Mi amigos, bienvenidos aquí hoy. Gracias. I appreciate all fathers. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being present, fathers. All right, fathers, we have another powerful live stream today. Fathers, what we're going to be discussing is protecting our daughters from misogyny. Let me repeat that, fathers of daughters. Protecting our daughters from misogyny. Okay, fathers, why am I talking about misogyny? For those of us that are girl dads, for those of us that are fathers of daughters, this is going to happen. Misogyny is going to come for our daughters because we have a bunch of little boys and a bunch of men in this world whose fathers are not a part of their lives. They don't have uncles. They don't have first cousins who have raised them and helped them understand their responsibility on how to treat our daughters and how to treat women. So we're going to talk about misogyny, fathers. We're dealing with a situation today. I'm the father. I'm a grow dad of 4 adult daughters, 36, 30, 26, and 24. Now, when I'm thinking about misogyny, fathers, I'm thinking about today's teenage girls who are Gen Z and Gen Alpha little girls, okay? So, fathers, we have to be aware of exactly what is going on in the world, what is happening to our daughters, and how we have to have these discussions with them to protect them from misogyny of men, of little boys. These tough discussions will need to take place with our daughters because I got to tell you, the research that I do on the internet, when I'm coming across all these social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, it's amazing to me the amount of misogyny that little boys and men come for our daughters. So as fathers of daughters, we have to be fully aware and we have to be equipped on how we're going to deal with this. I would encourage all fathers of daughters, grow dads, start doing your research regarding misogyny of our daughters. If you have a teenage girl, 14, 15, actually 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 12 through 18, it is time for you fathers to start doing your research, to see exactly what is going on in this world and how little boys and men are coming for our daughters disrespectfully, not respecting women, talking bad about modern women. Fathers, you need to be aware of what's on social media platforms. The red pill communities, right? These are men that call themselves man's activists. They're men that disrespect women. They're men who totally are going against women. And there's a gender gap. There's a gender divide. I'm seeing this in all of the research, and particularly having adult daughters. These are discussions I've had with my daughters over the last few years. And one of the reasons that I started my YouTube channel was because of these discussions that I was having with my adult daughters. So fathers, this is not the time to fall back or lay back. You have to be instrumental in your daughters' lives as teenagers, 12 to 18. They need you now more than ever, fathers. They need you to be able to explain things to them. They need you to be able to have their backs unconditionally. They need your validation. They need you, fathers, in their life to be at the forefront for protection and safety. Grow Dad YouTube channel is all about education, information through instruction. This is my way of giving back to fathers because I'm at a totally different transition in my life. All my daughters are adult women. They're living their best lives. They are professional women. They're doing their thing. I'm proud of all of my daughters. I did an incredible job raising them by the grace of God, first and foremost. Let me make that perfectly clear. By the grace of God, my daughters are amazing women. They're amazing adult women. So fathers, I have some videos that I want to share with you today. We're talking about protecting our daughters from misogyny. I know a lot of fathers that have baby girls that are under 10 years of age. This doesn't apply to you necessarily, but it's never too early to start speaking to our daughters. It's never too early to start explaining to our daughters. It never is, fathers. I started talking to my daughters about their bodies when they were all 5 years of age, because I'm a former state of Colorado juvenile probation officer. I worked in the criminal justice system for 20 years. I also worked in K-12 education for 10 years. Former teacher, restorative justice coordinator, and dean of students. I've worked with children and families from all socioeconomic backgrounds in all socioeconomic classes in the 30 years that I was a professional in the criminal justice system in K-12 education. So fathers, I know what I'm talking about because I've raised 4 daughters myself. This is my way of giving back to fathers. I want to help all fathers understand our sense of urgency and what we have to do on a daily basis to ensure the protection and safety of our baby girls. Also, fathers, I have a book I've written. It's self-published. It's called Daddy's Girls. It's available at Amazon.com. Feel free to purchase my book directly from Amazon.com. It is complimentary of my YouTube channel. It's complimentary of my live streams and the videos that I am presenting today. All videos that I share during my live stream, fathers, they're always available in the description. So you never have the need to ever worry about not finding the videos that I am sharing with you. They're in the description of every live stream. So fathers, I need your attention today. I need you to process these videos. I need you to see exactly how some of these fathers are dealing with misogyny and the protection of our daughters. Social media platforms are only going to get worse. And I got to tell you, I researched over 300 videos on Black male content creators in the manosphere, the red pill communities. I actually have a playlist on my YouTube channel that is dedicated to addressing the manosphere and the red pill communities. Feel free. There's videos that are in there that explain what the manosphere is, what it's all about, and how the manosphere and red pill communities are coming for our baby girls. So fathers, I'm one of them fathers. It's better to be equipped, and have the information to be able to make informed decisions in the best interest of our daughters. Protection and safety should be our priority for our baby girls, making sure they're not disrespected or taken advantage of by a lot of the scum little boys and scum men that are in this world that don't give a shit about our daughters. Okay, fathers, these first 3 videos I'm going to share with you are back to back to back. Then I'm going to come back and comment on them, okay? So fathers, I need your attention. I need you to understand, and I need you to process what is taking place, protecting our daughters from misogyny today. All right, fathers, let's get into it.
Today, we're going to look at a book called The Brief History of Misogyny by Jack Holland. I think we're going to call it brief only because if it was going to be like the full history of misogyny, I don't have enough space for all the volumes it would take in this office, and nor do you. No one has enough space for all the stupid things men have done to enforce men, I don't know, being in charge of women. So let's dive into that today. Before we get there, if you want to support the channel, you can go to patreon.com/Curtis McHale, support the channel, or you can go to curtismchale.ca/Skillshare, take one of my productivity courses. Buckle up, let's talk about misogyny. So let's get the very obvious thing out of the way first. I'm a dude. I'm a white dude even. I have grown up being told in so many ways that I wouldn't even recognize that whatever I want is the right thing and that I deserve prominence over everything else. Now, I intellectually understand that this is not right, and yet many of my behaviors will still fall into that pattern despite my best efforts because that's how I've been brought up. But I'm responsible for my own behavior. I am responsible for my own behavior and my own learning, and I need to start taking responsibility for that, which is one of the reasons I read The Brief History of Misogyny, and another book coming up about raising strong daughters, which is really like an anti-misogyny book cast as like a, hey, be a good parent book. So that's coming up, that review. And so this is why I'm reading these things, because I'm responsible for my behavior, for learning on my own, and I should not ever be putting my learning on someone else. And that goes for you too, any dudes that are watching this. It's up to you to learn how to, in many ways, just not be an asshole, so that you can treat women how they should be treated, instead of how we are brought up to treat women, which is less than us, worthy of our sexual attention only. So let's dive in a little bit more into what Jack Holland talked about. There's no way I can talk about all of this, but we're going to talk about some of the highlights that I saw in the book. Now, because this is a history book, there's a lot of stuff that's, say, older, right? A couple hundred years, right? It goes back to Roman times, just those thousands of years. Anyways, there's lots of stuff like that. And it's easy to look at some of these beliefs and say, oh, we're totally better than this. And the truth is we are not, right? We see this in Canada with how we are perfectly happy in Canada as a nation to deal with Saudi Arabia on oil, despite the fact that they treat women horribly, like many groups horribly, but women horribly. We are totally okay with that because oil has more value than the treatment of women to us. Which, when you think of it like that, oil is more important. I'd rather have cheap gas in my car than make sure women aren't getting abused and have to fight for any right. They're not allowed to drive, stuff like that. That seems ludicrous, right? In the US, we see this with even the recent election. Biden won, great. But we saw however many millions, 40 whatever percent, high 40% of the population voted for a guy who has said multiple times, I sexually assault women, I grab them, and it's totally cool. And we said, hey, yeah, but that's less important than some of the other things you purport you'll do, which most of it never happened. So that's vile. I don't know what else to say. It's vile. We're saying 50% of the population is less valuable than oil, than some other thing we value, and it's vile. That's it. Another big thing that came out through multiple eras is that men work to control women's bodies, right? In Roman times, it was, don't show your hair. And if you showed your hair to another man, then you were terrible. You could be divorced for showing your hair. And it put your husband in control of your body, of your beauty. In Christian times, we see this, not just Christian times, but in the Christian faith, we see this with women being told that it's up to them to to be modest, so they don't distract men. We see this has even moved into our schools. And luckily, not in my school district. They basically said, wear whatever you want, just don't be dumb. That's it. Wear whatever you want. It's up to parents. And so there's ultimately no dress code outside of no hate speech, no drug, stuff like that on your clothing. But as far as skirt length, nothing like that, there is no rules around here. But we don't see that everywhere. I remember in high school, girls being sent home because they were distracting the boys with some apparel, which not only puts the onus for a boy's behavior on the girls, it also says that it is more important to educate the boys than the girls, right? We're not going to worry about the girls' comfort, about what they want. We're going to make sure that the boys are okay. And that continues now, regularly. We continually show women that men get to sit around and argue about the reproductive capabilities of women, whether they can take birth control or whether abortions are okay, or you don't have the parts. I'm absolutely certain that men would be up in arms if women said, well, we get to decide that after two children, all men have to have a vasectomy. That's it. There's nothing else. You don't get a choice in it. You just have to do it. If women were arguing about the reproductive capabilities of men, there would be this is so terrible. You don't get to say, this is not your body. And yet we do the same thing. We argue about the reproductive capacity of women, and it's usually a bunch of white dudes sitting around in a room saying, hey, you shouldn't be allowed to do this. Why do you even get to say, guys? And we already touched on this, right? When we talked about women being made to take responsibility for boys' actions. And that's what misogyny and in many ways racism seems to me that's what it is. That it is, I have a problem, right? As a boy, I can't stop looking at you. And so you need to go do something to make it harder for me to want to look at you all the time, right? It's a male problem. It's a problem with men. Misogyny is a male problem, and yet women bear the brunt of it. Racism is predominantly a white person problem, and yet people of color bear the brunt of this, of the terribleness, of the vileness that comes out of it, right? And it's just, I don't know what to say, but it's just wrong. And that's why I'm reading a book like this. That's why I'm reading many of the other books that I have on my back shelf here, because I'm responsible for my behavior, and I need to make sure that my behavior is in accordance to what I want my kids to see too. I think really that's it for me today on this book. It was a good book. We get more history. A bunch of it, you're like, okay, great, like Roman times, and I still see a lot of that happening today. I think if you really want to look at a good book that talks about how to treat women well, then How to Raise Strong Girls. Let me grab the book. It's right on my shelf. There you go. Raising Empowered Daughters by Mike Adamick. I think that's actually maybe a better book for like, this is more history. This one is more how-to. And I'll actually be reviewing Raising Empowered Daughters in the coming weeks. I'm not sure when, but in a few weeks, you'll actually see that one coming up. So today, if you like the video, thumbs up below. YouTube lets people know that the videos are cool then. If you loved it, you can subscribe and hit the bell. And maybe YouTube will let you know that something happened because of the bell, but it's a YouTube algorithm, so who knows? Go to your subscriptions, find my videos. And then if you want to support the channel, you can go to patreon.com/Curtis McHale, support the channel, or you can go to curtismchale.ca/Skillshare. You can take one of my productivity courses. That's it. Have a good day. If you're a dude, stop being an asshole.
She supports the Premier. She supports a Premiership team. She plays at school. She plays for a team, and she likes to look at what the teams of the players have been doing, how they've been playing, looking at results, and a bit of that involves going onto message boards, reading about sort of people's opinions, reading about what's been happening, and unfortunately, some of what she sees is misogynistic, which is obviously quite hurtful. Obviously, it's quite distasteful, and it has no place in society, as far as I believe. When my daughter did see this, she thankfully came and spoke to me. She showed me what she'd seen, and we were able to talk about it. Obviously, dispelled those messages as being obviously completely false. We sat and we watched some YouTube videos of the Lionesses playing, obviously showing how well they'd done at tournaments. I've taken her to football matches where she's been able to sort of meet some of the players and discuss sort of their backgrounds and where they've come from. I know her school does or has done talks about this kind of topic and about sort of in a broader sense, online messaging and online security, etc. But it was really more of a chat at home about showing women are just as good at sport, just as good in politics, just as good in every job across the world, and that they're not being this kind of sexist hierarchy that she may have seen or unfortunately may have witnessed in places. But I think she had a good understanding anyway. I don't think she took it to heart. I think she knows that, you know, she's a strong, she's a powerful woman. She can do whatever she wants to do, be whoever she wants to be. I don't think it was a sort of a huge deal for her, but it was definitely something that I was thankful that we kind of discussed, and we were able to kind of put that to bed and raise her profile or the feelings that she had of, you know, anything that she might have thought she wasn't worthy or she didn't have a place in. We were able to talk about that and put that to bed. For any other parents, I think that's probably the route to go down, that positive reinforcement, positive talk, showing examples of the wonderful things across the gamut, the spectrum of sport, music, science, politics, the workplace, you know, just how wonderful and how strong women are, and really just showing how great your children could be and all the wonderful things that they can do and become.
I was like, listen, when Chloe was born 15 years ago, I was like, I want her to be a confident, athletic, decisive, sure woman. For that to happen, I have to be a role model of what a man looks like. Andrew, my son, has to be a role model of what a man looks like. So since Andrew was always, he's 2 years older than her, as soon as Chloe started to toddle and we would walk towards the car, I would tell Andrew, hey, Andrew, open your sister's door. So I would open Diana's door for Diana to get into the car. Andrew would open Chloe's door for her to climb into the car. And as Chloe got older, I think she was probably 6, maybe 7 years old, we started going on daddy-daughter dates. And we would do that a couple times a month. And I would say, hey, Chloe, where do you want to go? 90% of the time it was bowling, Chick-fil-A, Yogurtland.
That's it.
And I remember her asking one time while we're in the car, she goes, when you and mom go on a date, what do you guys do in the car? I go, we hold hands. And she reached across and held my hand. And in that moment, I was like, hey, Chloe, just so you know, when you're older and you have a friend who's a boy, if he doesn't open the door for you like me and brother do, if he wants to do anything more than just hold your hand in the car and he makes you feel uncomfortable, you tell him to stop the car and you get out and you call dad and brother and we're going to come get you. Okay. And so I instilled that in her early on. Like, again, this is your expectation of what a man is. Like, and today, like she's 15, she likes athletic guys. She likes guys who are confident. She likes guys who are decisive. She literally stopped. She's only had 2 boyfriends. Her first little boyfriend, who didn't work out so well for him, she stopped at the door of his mom's car when his mom came to pick them up. And he came out, rung the doorbell. They walked out to his mom's car together. And he went in the other side, like the driver's side, in the back seat. And then Chloe's just standing there. And so he's like, hey, are you okay? She's like, yeah, can you come open my door? And he came around and he opened the door and encouraged him, like, hey man, I really like you, but like as a boy, as a man, you've got to open my door. These are the things you got to do. These are the expectations I have. And he would do it here and there and forget about it. And soon she was just like, hey, guess what? We're done. She just lost interest in him. And even today, we continue to do our daddy-daughter dates, but now they're nice high-end sushi restaurants, and the check has gotten much bigger than just bowling and Yogurtland and Chick-fil-A. But the conversations are even better because she just tells me, like, this is what's happening with the girls on TikTok my age. This is what's happening with the girls who are dealing with anxiety and depression. She taught me a phrase. She goes, I have friends who just trauma dump. And I go, baby, what's trauma? She goes, like, it's when they begin to just like dump all their trauma on you because they take so much pride in all their disaster of their life. And she goes, I can't understand why they're excited about having all this trauma. They're about being on these pills that control their mood, why they treat themselves like a piece of meat on Like she's got a couple friends who on TikTok like wear low cleavage shit and kind of position the camera where you could see their little child titties. And like Chloe just won't do that.
Right.
Like she just won't do that. And it's because the expectations that I've set for her from day one. And so what this man watching, listening, feeling, and if he can role model the type of man that he wants her to be with, and he can also talk to her about it and take her on dates and show her that she's valued, put her in sports. Chloe's always been in sports. Till this day, she plays volleyball and for club and for high school. Then all of a sudden, you've got this like confident woman who is not afraid to say no, who is not willing to compromise on her integrity and character, who is not going to, go out with a group of guys and, hey, I have guy friends. No fucking girl should have guy friends. Any girl that has guy friends, like all those guy friends are like a dick in a jar. I think it was Chris Rock that said, like, in case of emergency, break glass. You know what I mean? Like if a girl has a whole bunch of guy friends, is because she likes the validation and approval, the sexual validation and approval they're giving her.
Right.
My daughter has girlfriends because she gets her own validation and approval by being in shape, having her core values, being a badass on the volleyball court. And so she doesn't need some guys sexually puffing her up. You know what I mean? Like she has her friends, they're girls, and they do their girl shit, whatever that is, man. And so that's what this guy needs to do. Like he doesn't need to worry about social media controlling the narrative of how she becomes if he takes full control of the influence that he has over her.
Okay, fathers, 3 excellent videos. What are your thoughts on those videos, fathers of daughters, grow dads? Protecting our daughters from misogyny. We're going to have these discussions, fathers of daughters, with our baby girls. We are. Because as you can see, I do a lot of research on YouTube when I'm getting ready for my live streams. I live stream every week, once a week. And got to tell you, there's so much foolishness and so much nonsense on social media platforms. And I'm not happy about none of it. And this is why, through education, I'm trying to help fathers equip themselves so they could be aware of what's out there, what's coming for their baby girls. My daughters are adult women, and they're dealing with the foolishness and nonsense of so many weak men. We have a lot of weak men out here, fathers. We just do. They're weak as hell. They didn't have their fathers in their lives. They're weak men. And they treat women like they can own them and their objects. You really need to, fathers, I'm going to encourage you. Spend some time doing research on the manosphere in the red pill communities. You are going to be shocked what you're coming across. You're going to be shocked what you're seeing coming out of these men's mouths. They honestly believe, a lot of these men in the manosphere, in the red pill communities, are talking about women need to get on my page. The majority of these men don't have a pot to piss in. They do not have a pot to piss in. But they're trying to tell our daughters what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it. And if they don't, they try to manipulate our daughters into making them believe and think they're less than women. They go after their self-esteem. So if your daughter's self-esteem isn't where it needs to be, she can become a victim. She can fall prey to these weak-ass men. And I'm telling you, fathers, the 300 videos that I researched on black male content creators in the manosphere, in the red pill communities, horrible. Absolutely horrible. Like I said, I have an entire playlist on the manosphere and red pill communities. Check those videos out, fathers. Check those videos out. Because it is absolutely shameful and it is unacceptable. As long as I have breath in me, my daughters know I'm not having none of this. I'm a Gen Xer. And we don't get down like that. I don't know what has happened with so many of millennial and Gen Z men. It left me speechless. It really is. It's crazy to me how a lot of these men think and what they say about women. Okay, fathers. So I'm just saying, you need to start doing your research on the manosphere and red pill communities so you can know exactly where they're with these little boys and these men, where they're coming from. Because I'm telling you straight up, I personally, I cannot be around men all the time. I got to be around women. I have to have balance. It's just crazy. To me, these men in the manosphere, they just want to be around men to try to dominate women. That's not natural order for men. Men have balance because of women in our lives. They bring balance. Women bring balance. So to always want to be around men to talk this male shit, it's crazy to me. It really, really is crazy to me. Like I said, I have an entire playlist on the manosphere and red pill communities. So feel free to check it out, fathers. Okay, fathers, this next video, we're going to be discussing trafficking of our baby girls. Sex trafficking. We're going to take a look at it. And I've already discussed this in several other videos, like I said, but you can never stop talking about sex trafficking and what happens to our baby girls if they ever get caught up in it. So let me get it ready. Okay, fathers, here's the next video on sex trafficking of our daughters.
On average, within 48 hours, they have them hooked and they have them in a hotel having sex with numerous men a night.
If you're abused, don't be afraid to acknowledge it and don't be afraid to report it.
Inside the deeply troubling and destructive world of underage girls lured into sex trafficking. The latest to go viral, girls, women, and men in the tell-all docuseries Surviving R. Kelly, where young victims of the rich and powerful R&B singer speak out. To our own neighborhoods, where confirmed sex trafficking is the subject of a just-released Canadian government report sounding the alarm for safety. Light can overcome darkness, protecting our exploited daughters. Today on Context. I'm Lorna Dueck.
I'm Sheldon Neal.
And I'm Molly Thomas.
And this is Context.
A scathing documentary resurfaces allegations of sexual abuse at the hands of R&B singer R. Kelly. A documentary so powerful, it asks, is the singer's fame allowing him to allegedly abuse minors?
The most vulnerable among us are our children. Sex traffickers in Canada prey on their vulnerability, targeting young girls online and even in their schools. A detective from Toronto Sex Crime Unit details how grim the situation is for girls who are preyed upon in Canada.
Young women wanting to escape the chains of sex trafficking are constantly in danger. We hear from the director of a Canadian safe house who offers trafficked girls and women the security they need for a new start. Sounding the alarm this week on vulnerable girls is pop culture and celebrity outrage. To Molly and Sheldon now with why some of the public have finally had enough of R. Kelly.
We've probably seen, I know Molly would join me on this, we've seen a lot of popular artists, Celine Dion, Lady Gaga.
Yeah, Chance the Rapper.
That's right. Among many, really saying no to R. Kelly right now, distancing themselves from collaborations, especially after, this documentary aired. And I want to take you to the screens. For those who really don't know much about who R. Kelly is, he is one of the world's most famous R&B singers. They call him actually the king of R&B.
Yeah, I Believe I Can Fly. It
Big
took home
song.
3 Grammys. It's huge. Everybody knows this man.
He is by no means a new artist. And, you talked about I Believe I Can Fly. Many top top Billboard charting hits. One of the many male solo artists really leading this charge. But when word of this came, I mean, people just said, no, we've had enough. Word of his new album, actually, that was set to come out at the beginning of this year, his own his own label, RCA, say we're going to suspend all this and shut this thing down.
Yeah, it's all part of the Mute R. Kelly hashtag you're probably seeing around the world. So basically, his professional life has been quite successful, but his personal life has been dogged with controversy. So in 1994, we'll take you to the screens, Kelly reportedly was secretly wed to Aaliyah, his 15-year-old protege at the time. The illegal marriage was actually annulled shortly thereafter.
That's right.
Then we go into 2008. Kelly was accused of 21 counts of making child pornography. Now, the trial took actually 6 years, and prosecutors could not prove that the girl in that tape was a minor.
It's unbelievable.
Mhm.
And there's even more you're sharing with us as well.
Yeah, in 2017, a BuzzFeed article alleged that R. Kelly was holding a group of women in a sex cult against their will, so that brought even more conversation to the table. And then this year, the BBC released this documentary that you're looking at, where an ex-girlfriend explained how Kelly really grooms young girls. So this is not a new conversation. Of course, this latest docuseries is women, former tour managers, famous singers like John Legend,
That's
contributing their voices to this, saying, hey, we need to listen up. We need to listen up now.
And I think what's interesting we talk about is the idea of Mute R. Kelly too soft. And really, that's really a throwback to, because he has such a hold on a lot of people have listened to over the years. I'll take you quickly to the screens. This is some of the response that's actually been on Twitter. Someone saying, Mute R. Kelly, 53 songs written or sung by R. Kelly to add to the list. You can't read all the names there, but just take a look at that. We're seeing hits from the 90s, 2000s, up into recent years. And we're just trying to say, listen, this really has to come to a close on this. And we took to the streets, actually, to really get an idea of what people are saying in regards to this. Maybe we could just throw to that really quickly.
It's sad, really.
Well, I think it's disgusting, to be honest. And I think like Gaga, because she collaborated with him on a song and she removed it from social media and from YouTube and stuff. So I think for her to kind of make that powerful sort of statement and to do that and to take action in that way is like pretty cool.
No shock here. R. Kelly is like a known sexual offender.
And Kelly, for the record, has never been convicted and still denies any wrongdoing.
That's right.
It is alleged, though, that he was sexually abused himself as a child, of course, that have been accused in the past.
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, some really big stars. So this is, in some ways, can be a pop culture issue.
And it's quite interesting. You talk about that culture. I feel like our culture really buys into this stuff. It's a unique place for R. Kelly to try to find healing from a culture that's one incredibly over-sexualized and then demanding that same sexualization from the artist. What a place and an environment, very toxic for someone to try to find internal healing.
Yeah, there were so many years after these first accusations where his hits got even bigger. And they were all around sexual activity, lots of young women in those videos. Just an interesting thing to keep in mind.
The Mute R. Kelly movement, you know about that? Maybe you want to jump into that? Yeah.
So the Mute R. Kelly movement, Spotify, Google Play got on board with this. They've completely banned his songs now. So that's a huge move by the music industry. And wow, Sheldon, people are talking about this online.
That's right. Even on our own Facebook context page, I want to bring this up full screen for you from Helena. Now, and it's quite an interesting thing she's saying. She says, you know, she might not be feeling all the items we choose to feature here. And, you know, that's always touch and go. But here's the big thing I want to bring to light here. Surely there are more important issues in Canada that affect more people, and perhaps it should be kept Canadian. But here's what I want to say, and we can come out of that on full screen. The beautiful thing about this that I really want Canadians to know is that, listen, this is happening in our own backyard. We're talking theme parks, schools down the street from you. This is not a US issue or across the pond issue. No, this is in our very own Canadian culture. So we need to ensure this is talked about, covered, and we reach a place of healing and beyond all solutions.
Let's bring in Dr. Joy Harden Bradford. She's a licensed psychologist who started Therapy for Black Girls, an online space to encourage the mental wellness of Black women and girls. Dr. Joy, great to have you with us.
Hi.
Dr. Joy, what went through your mind as you watched this R. Kelly docuseries?
I think, you know, like lots of people, I was familiar with the story, but I was not aware of the levels and the depths of everything going on, all of the people that it seems like have been involved in kind of continuing this system of abuse and assault. So I was really shocked by lots of the information that was shared in the docuseries.
Doctor, do you think that these R. Kelly accusations are emblematic of a wider issue at play, especially as you're talking to clients, you're talking to people that have gone through similar scenarios?
Yeah, I definitely do think so. I mean, I think one part that was really highlighted for me in the docuseries was the idea of how perpetrators will groom their victims. And you saw that shared a lot. And I think that that happens far more often than people want to talk about and far more often than people are even aware of. So I think that that was a very important part of the conversation that was brought out.
You know, we often hear the term at-risk girls, doctor. What does that look like in the United States? Can we put a race factor on that, or is that unfair?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a risk factor. I mean, because I think some of that feeds into the idea that a victim only looks one kind of way. But I do think that there are some factors that came into play here. So Black and brown girls were targeted, and you saw that a lot in the docuseries that talked about that's a part of the reason why this has been able to continue to go on is because historically, Black and brown girls have not been believed, or they have thought to have contributed in some way to them being assaulted. So you hear this term fast girls, so that they were wearing shorts that were too short, or they were leading him on or in some way, or that they can somehow put themselves in a situation to be targeted. And so, of course, I think even in the docuseries, you heard from the juror who talked about, I just didn't like the girls. I didn't believe them, the way they dressed. So all of that, I think, really kind of pointed to some of the factors that have allowed this to continue to be an issue in ways that I don't think we would see if these were not Black and brown girls.
So then, doctor, how do we hear these girls? How do we value these girls differently moving forward, hopefully learning from this situation?
Yeah, I think what's really important is to make sure that we are believing young women when they're coming forward with their stories about these kinds of things happening. I also think it's really important that we not just pay attention to R. Kelly, but to all of the other people in our communities. You will hear like, "Oh, don't leave your kid alone with Uncle so and so," right? And so I think it's important for us to not just focus on him, but also to look at the people in our communities who may be also perpetrating violence.
Let me ask you about pop culture. It's a difficult thing when there's so much bombarding us with media, especially young people. We're around social media all the time. What do you say? I mean, to people that are trying to find, I guess, their identity and value in the midst of all of that, and there's predators literally lurking for vulnerable victims.
Yeah, I do think it's really important to be mindful of how you are interacting in your relationship with social media. I think it's an incredible tool. I have met friends and colleagues across the world through social media, and I think lots of other people have made very good connections. But I do think, like you mentioned, it's also a hotbed for people who are wanting to prey on people who may not necessarily be paying attention. So I think it's just always a good idea to kind of keep your wits about yourselves and make sure that you have a good idea of who you're talking with, especially if we're talking about minors, that parents and guardians need to make sure that they have an idea of what's going on with their kids in terms of how they're using their technology.
Yeah, it's going to take a village really to protect young girls. Dr. Joy, great to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Molly. Powerful stuff. Well, here in Canada, a special House of Commons standing committee has been traveling the country hearing stories of human trafficking survivors. Since 2002, Canada has enacted several provisions to combat and prevent human trafficking. In Toronto, there is a designated sex crimes human trafficking unit that works 24/7 to try and protect young girls from predators. And Sheldon Neal now with that reality in our own backyard.
How prevalent is human trafficking in Toronto?
We've had over 1,000 occurrences in just 4 years, from 2014 to 2018. So the problem here is very prevalent, and it goes right across Canada.
Give us a sense from how long it takes for the victim to really become involved in the sex trade business with the trafficker.
People think that grooming process takes months on end. On average, 48 hours, they're in the sex trade. That's how limited the time is. Within 48 hours, they have them hooked, and they have them in a hotel having sex with numerous men a night. These girls, they range from the age 14 to 19, 20. The recruiting age for them are usually between 14 and 17. We've had victims as young as 12, 13 here. They come from every demographic. This doesn't discriminate, right? They come from marginalized communities. They come from parents who are very wealthy, middle class. So it doesn't discriminate that way. But what they do have, almost every single one of them, is a vulnerability. They're looking for something. They're looking for some love. They're looking for some attention. And that's where they get hooked, right? Because, kids these days, and I have a 16-year-old, they like that attention, especially social media. They tell everybody their whole story. So there'll be one day where a girl might say, I don't feel very good about myself today, or I feel ugly today. And these guys, they troll the internet, right? And they look at what's being said and they say, well, you know what? You look beautiful. You look fine. I wish you were my girl. And that's the hook. The hook is somebody's paying attention to me. Now they've got that hook and they start exchanging information. They go and see each other, have a coffee, and then the pimp will start buying gifts for the girl. Start paying more attention. And then they say, well, if you want to be with me, you got to do this for me. And usually it starts out with, have sex with one guy, then have sex with 2 or 3 guys. And then all of a sudden, now they're forced to have sex with 15 to 20 guys.
What kind of prevention efforts or systems are in place to handle this?
We have a great relationship with the hospitality industry. We do conferences and we train hospitality staff in order to let them know what to look for so that they can call the police and tell us there's a problem. There might be human trafficking going on. We have an initiative called Project Protect with the banks, where we have trained their investigators to look for certain signs of human trafficking. We're seeing that they're being picked up at malls, social media, these dating apps, bars, nightclubs, these theme parks, like Wonderland. A very big emerging trend in Toronto is that they're recruiting right out of the middle schools and high schools. And they'll get other girls to go and recruit for them. Really comes down to one thing, education. If we can educate everybody, the mothers, the fathers, everyone in the community, to let them know what the characteristics are, then at that point, they can do something. They can intervene. They can call the police. We can't arrest ourselves out of this problem. It's almost impossible. We need the help of the public. We need the help of the community. We need the help of all these industries. We can't just live in our own little silos. We have to come together in a partnership to make sure that we all help the most vulnerable, and that's our children.
Thanks, Sheldon. Yes, it is our children who are the most vulnerable among us, and we are the ones responsible for protecting them. Did you know that sex trafficking is the most prevalent form of trafficking in the world? The United Nations' latest report says it vastly outnumbers trafficking of forced labor, begging, or debt repayment. Now, globally, the majority of sex trafficking victims are women and children. Here in Canada, police reported data says there was 865 victims of human trafficking in the years of 2009 and 2016. Of those cases, 58% involved prostitution. Again, the vast majority of these victims are women as well. Almost 3/4 of them under the age of 25, another 27% under the age of 18. Still ahead, saving women from sex trafficking and pimps. How a safe house in an undisclosed location helps women transition out of the sex trade. Plus, education is the key to helping vulnerable, at-risk girls. But are the warning signs getting through to girls online and their families?
Castle is the first video streaming service that's been created to serve you, with high-quality, faith-based media for all ages and a live 24/7 prayer chat. Castle features Christian TV shows, documentaries, teaching series, and kids content. Start your free 30-day trial of Castle and discover this quality Christian resource made for your entertainment and your spiritual growth. Sign up now at intothecastle.com.
When we looked at The demographics on sex trafficking, Indigenous women are clearly the most at-risk group in Canada. The former chief at the Elsipogtog First Nation in New Brunswick is Susan Levi-Peters. She joins me now. Susan, you're sounding the alarm on this. Tell us what you see happening with human trafficking at Elsipogtog First Nations.
Well, we have a lot of, not a lot, but some women, young girls that are selling their bodies for either drugs or to maintain themselves. In fact, recently we just had a young girl that spoke out again because her sister committed suicide. And she was blaming the men that were selling her or threatening her. So that's when I also spoke out because I seen her story on Facebook, and I'm a survivor of rape myself, living in the community. So when she spoke out, I knew it was time for me to speak out also.
But trafficking is, people are moved to a different place. They're completely lose all freedom. Why are Native women on your reserve and across Canada being targeted?
I believe a lot of it has to do with poverty and lack of housing, because and it's corruption in my community. We have a lot of corruption, so corruption causes poverty. Poverty causes crime, and a lot of times these young women they don't know where to turn to, and our social assistance welfare rate hasn't gone up for over 30 years now. So they're living with rates that are 30 years back. And so it's hard. And then when you have like 80% unemployment rate, and so you don't know where to turn to. And I had one mother contact me, and I sent her to the RCMPs for her daughter to get help. And she didn't get anything. And I go to the RCMP. I even go to my chief and council now after the last suicide, and I told them, like, it has to stop, because what's happening is internally it's happening, and then we have even non-natives coming into the community.
So it's, Susan, just to clarify, is this happening on both levels? This is happening First Peoples to First Peoples, and now non-natives coming in?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
And poverty relief is making many girls too desperate. They're not recognizing the danger of what they're saying yes to in a traffic proposition.
Yes, yeah.
Oh.
And a lot of, or just to survive. And, so it's, and when like residential school, the abuse that happened at a residential schools is now, passed down. Like, we were not taught how to parent or the abuse. So now the sexual abuse is probably high. I know back in the early 1990s, we had 7 suicides in a row, and we had an inquest done. And back then it came back out that all the suicide people were victims of sexual abuse.
All right.
So,
Susan, we're going to leave it at that right now, and thank you. And I'm glad you're writing a book, Standing Up, which will be out shortly. And thank you. We'll stay in touch with you on this. Thank you for joining me.
Yes, thank you very much.
Next week on Context, a surprise. We are going to bring you my new book. I've recently finished writing with Dr. Nell DeBoer, For Your Health. And it works for us next week on Context in a powerful way, because we will be looking at the increasing pressure to change Canada's laws around assisted dying. So it is my hope that For Your Health helps engage our fascination with how do we stay healthy, what do we do when we aren't healthy, and is there such a thing as miraculous healings? You won't want to miss next week on Context, For Your Health.
A lot of the time, traffickers will kind of woo people into this situation by filling a need that they have or a desire that they have. And a lot of the time, they may shower them with gifts, love, attention, which, again, what I said, like, it's kind of a term called boyfriending.
They come to her beaten, bruised, and broken down. A life they barely escaped. Not all do get out or stay out of the game. Maggie Barato and her front row seat to trafficked women next.
Castle is the first video streaming service that's been created to serve you, with high-quality, faith-based media for all ages and a live 24/7 prayer chat. Castle features Christian TV shows, documentaries, teaching series, and kids content. Start your free 30-day trial of Castle and discover this quality Christian resource made for your entertainment and your spiritual growth. Sign up now at intothecastle.com.
Where can women go to escape the holds of their sex traffickers? Maggie Barato is on the front line of that question. She runs a safe house in an undisclosed location in rural Ontario. She joins me now. Maggie, 18 admissions this last season alone. What condition do girls and women arrive in?
The women who arrive at our safe house are in crisis. And when I say crisis, they're not just having a bad day, they're fighting for their life. If I think back on different admissions, some of the ladies had to be assisted to even walk into our facility. Some of them have come with untreated medical conditions. Some have come with pelvic trauma, untreated STDs. They come with no ID. Some of them come with no clothes, just a clothes on their back. So, yeah.
We have been shocked today, and you actually are able to see the start of recovery. So tell us what makes it possible to recover.
Yeah, there's so many components to it because we try to look at the woman and approach each woman individually. We have up to 5 women at a time, and that way we can really individualize the care. And so we're looking at the emotional trauma they're dealing with. We look at the drug addiction or the physical problems. So we have a medical clinic right at our house. We have a medical doctor that works with us right at the Transformation House. We have psychotherapists that we work with, and we have equine therapy on the property. We have horses.
Tell me about that, because the healing touch of animals, something goes on. Tell me about that.
A lot of the women are drawn to the animals, especially the horses, and we have rescued horses. So some of them have been abused and mistreated, and a lot of the women can identify with the horses. And so interesting, I had a conversation now with one of the residents, and they feel so much compassion for the horses. And their question is, how could anybody hurt such a beautiful creature? And so a lot of these women, their healing journey is to take that same compassion that they feel for the horses and apply it to themselves. How could anybody hurt such a beautiful person? So,
you feel deeply inspired by God to do this. Why?
Yeah.
Why is this a Christian undertaking for you?
I feel like the Beauty for Ashes Transformation House has been founded on the compassion of Jesus Christ. It is compassion. It's the love of God. It's the most powerful force. It's what motivates all of our team. We're faith-based, and God is woven through the center of all our programming. And the message is, you are meant to be here. God designed and created you for a purpose, and you are worth it.
And you're not meant to be destroyed and
That's
thrown
right.
away, which is what the trafficking system does.
Yeah.
If people need help, how do they find you?
They can find us online on our website, our Facebook site, or they can call one of our headquarters at our healing center in Arthur.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, Maggie. And we're going to be right back with my wrap.
Nobody wants vulnerable women and children to be trafficked. So we focus on the common ground. If we're going to see an end to this and we're going to find referrals and services for victims, we have to focus on coordinating those services.
Our own listening ears and eyes are part of ending human trafficking in Canada. 2 big vulnerabilities that open girls up to trafficking are this: They feel unheard and unnoticed. Unheard. I actually don't have enough to live on. Unnoticed. I feel so ugly. Into both those needs, traffickers listen. On a girl's social media, at school, at the mall, they listen to girls and validate the vulnerable person's feelings. And then they move in with generosity and they build trust. If human traffickers can engage unheard and unnoticed vulnerable girls, how about us? That's the kind of Canada we want to build. All the guests and resources on our program this week are posted on the Context website. Get involved in a better tomorrow. For all of us, I'm Lorna Duick. Join us again next week.
Okay, fathers, excellent video. And needed to share that one. Needed to share that regarding trafficking of our daughters, because this is what can happen to baby girls when their fathers are not in their life, birth to 18 years of age. All of my research I do, and when I come across specifically with trafficking and prostitution of young girls, it's because their fathers were in their lives or have not been a part of their lives. So these little girls, they bond to whatever the wind blows, you know, and fathers of daughters, we have to be aware. If our daughters end up prostituting, if our daughters end up being trafficked, if our daughters end up on the pole dancing in gentlemen's clubs, you know, naked, it's on the fathers. It's not on the mothers. The one thing we don't get to do is we don't get to blame the mothers. This is what will happen and can happen if fathers are not a part of their daughters' lives, birth to 18 years of age. It's that simple. When little girls don't have their fathers, they don't have uncles, they don't have first male cousins. Predators waiting for them. They are waiting for them, protecting our daughters from misogyny. The struggle is real, fathers. Through education, instruction, and information. We have to get this right, fathers, because the world is waiting, and these men don't give a shit or give a damn about our baby girls. They don't. They're waiting for them. Social media platforms, it's the easiest way to get in touch with these baby girls, because most parents are not monitoring their baby girls' use of social media apps and who they're in contact with and what group chats they're having, and parents just aren't. So their daughters end up in a situation and they're freaking out and wondering why. Well, you're not paying attention, fathers. You're not paying attention, girl dads. You have to be involved. You have to know what's going on with our baby girls. It's that simple. Okay, fathers of daughters, girl dads, I have one more video. It's going to be talking about the manosphere, red pill communities, the loneliness industry of men, and why so many of these men, because they're lonely, end up in the manosphere, end up in red pill communities. So this next video is an excellent video. It's about 30 minutes long, and then we're going to end this live stream. So I appreciate you, fathers. Let me get it set up.
If there's one thing that the
Okay, fathers, last video. The business of the lonely man industry. It's in the description as well, fathers.
If there's one thing that the internet has taught me, it's that you can monetize just about anything.
Ice cream so good, yes, popcorn. Ice cream so good.
Imagine my lack of surprise when people monetized the epidemic of sad and lonely men.
Hustle University is the greatest thing that exists on the face of the planet.
That's what I want to teach you on this course.
Unplugging from the matrix of fitness and game.
And you might be thinking, oh, how big is this? Well, business is booming. Dozens of people, loads of YouTube channels that are earning millions of dollars a year selling a lie, claiming to have answers to a very real problem, everything worse. So let's go on a journey together. I'm going to put on my Morpheus cosplay and hand you that red pill. We're going down the rabbit hole of truth. I'm red pilling the red pill and breaking these lonely, desperate men out of their Andrew Tate worshipping mind matrix. One thing that is impossible to ignore when discussing the rise of internet ideologies and movements is that of misinformation and bias within the media. Clickbait-driven headlines and manipulative algorithms often make it difficult to know where to get reliable information. That's why I've been using Ground News, an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place and provides context that mainstream media does not, like political affiliation, source ownership, and factuality ratings. They are a small team working to hold the media accountable, and they are sponsoring this video. For instance, let's search Andrew Tate. On the website, we can see there are almost 500 stories published on him in the last 3 months. Ground News shows the top articles and even blind spot stories that are underreported by the media. Look at this story. Apple removing Tate's app. Only 33% of coverage on this story is coming from the right, making a blind spot for anyone who doesn't get their information from these sources. It's interesting to see some sources headline the claims, calling the app misogynistic and a pyramid scheme, while others say Apple was slammed for keeping the app. Ground News makes it super easy to understand where even your own bias might be. It is an important resource to avoid living in a bubble of algorithm-driven coverage. Go to ground.news/Kira and sign up through my link. Get 30% off unlimited access to data-driven information through my link before October 15th. What is the red pill? How did we get here? Why does it exist? And who cares? All very important questions, but let's tackle them in order of importance. So what is the red pill? The red pill has been many things. Originally, it was an allegory for transgender, according to the creator of the term, Lily Wachowski, who popularized it in The Matrix. However, and very ironically, now the red pill is used by a group of predominantly men who co-opt it as an ideology around how to live life, specifically about the real truth of society and their place within it. This mostly pertains to masculinity, conspiracy theories, making money, and women. The red pill is also not the only word that this movement goes by. It can also, in many popular spaces, be substituted with the word manosphere. If you've not heard of these things, you might be surprised to learn just how huge this movement is. So the question of how we got here comes down to one man, sort of.
Am I successful? Am I competent? You know, am I achieving things? Am I respected? If you start to look at these indicators of your life, you're going to end up being happier.
Now, I do need to say that Andrew Tate himself has said he isn't red pill and that he finds the whole concept and most of the people involved to be cringe, but his unwillingness to co-opt the term is irrelevant to the reality, and that is his talking points are almost identical to the whole space, and his popularity is what has accelerated the movement. And I do mean accelerated, because even without Andrew Tate or any other manosphere figurehead, this was an inevitability in modern society. We were already headed down this path. Andrew Tate was never the cause. He was simply the most prevalent symptom. Why do I say this? Well, let's answer the question of why it exists in the first place. It'll probably only take you a few minutes to Google search if you've not already seen these very shocking statistics when it comes to the rise of loneliness in men, especially young men. This is the real epidemic that is going to claim more lives than any contagious disease, and it's eroding the very foundation of modern society. For the record, this problem does not just envelop men, but it is more prevalent statistically for a multitude of reasons. On the face of it, men have less friends than ever before, they spend less time socializing with the friends that they do have than ever before, they're virgins for far longer, have sex less frequently overall, and they are self-deleting at an alarmingly high rate, with numbers trending upwards greater than ever before. They're also less likely to seek mental health assistance, more likely to turn to drugs or substance abuse to cope with these factors which don't even play into the self-deleting stat, and are overall becoming increasingly disenfranchised with the world, or most importantly, their place within it. So to answer the question of why Andrew Tate, why the Red Pill, why the Manosphere, Sneeko, podcasts like Fresh and Fit, the Red Pill Godfather, Rollo Tomasi, and many others exist, it's very simple. It's because they need to exist. Supply and demand. These people didn't just appear for no reason. They arrived at the right time with the right message. And that is obviously not me giving them my rubber stamp of approval, as I believe each one of the people I just listed, as well as the majority of the manosphere space, is a counterintuitive detriment to young men's lives. For reasons that we'll mostly go over in the next section, this is just me saying that this movement didn't arrive overnight for no reason and brainwash hundreds of millions of men. The male loneliness epidemic was already here. It's a cancer eating society. The manosphere presented itself as chemotherapy, bringing with it total destruction of the body, but without the added benefit of potentially eradicating the cancer. Not to say there are no good pieces of advice from any of these people, or a well-rationed person couldn't learn a few real truths from these spaces, such as eating right, exercising, socializing, and trying to better your situation financially. But these few truths are things almost anybody could tell you without the added baggage of what is adjacent to the grift of these male self-help gurus. I'm of course talking about conspiracy theories and hatred.
Obesity comes from you Jews affecting our media.
I'm the reason you're fat.
No, you guys got McDonald's and all that shit.
The very few men on earth I do trust, good old Alex Jones, he said this 2 months before 9/11.
They don't want you to be masculine. The biggest threat to their agenda is an independent, free-thinking man.
And to answer the last question of who cares, well, I know on social media nobody really cares about the fact that young men in particular are suffering, because it's cool to be inclusive and empathetic to everybody, except for those you deem to have power as a group, despite the fact that most average men have little to no power all over their own lives, let alone society. But you should care, because this is a reflection of that society. Not just that, but you probably have men in your lives as well that are struggling with things like this. Could be your brothers, fathers, sons, cousins, friends, or old acquaintances. I don't think it can be simultaneously true that we say everybody should get help, they all deserve compassion and understanding, but then demonize a clear growing trend that could bring economic and societal downturns just because it's cool to shit on men online. Which would probably sound better if it wasn't me, a man, saying this, but I am, because it is important. The rise of the Tate cells, as well as the growing incel movement, hatred of women, conspiracy nuts, and a whole other host of issues exist because as a society, this issue is prevalent and persistent. I think society in general is too busy looking at the surface of those, idiots who follow this stupid rhetoric to understand the reason that they do is because they're lost, and these people are telling them that it's okay. These grifters that are making them believe all these crazy, wild things are the only ones who are compassionately speaking to these men. They're making them believe, and the truth is, they are speaking pure lies, designed almost entirely for personal gain and enrichment. So let's talk about the real red pill. The reality of the matter is, the red pill does have some merit when taken at face value. There have been shifts in society that resulted in vastly different circumstances for everybody, but especially for young men. For starters, society has moved beyond where most people live And if they live where society now does, they then lack the skills to interact in the real world. That as a sentence doesn't make sense, right? Let me explain. Society for most younger people, as well as for most lonely people, exists online. Their society exists on social media. But where is it that they need to be in order to actually better their situation? The real world with real people, face-to-face interactions and social situations. This problem is compounding. The more time people spend online, whether as an escape from the pressures of real life because they don't feel that they fit in, or for comfort, the less social they're going to become, the more awkward any potential interactions will go. And of course, this leads to them being less and less likely to find the meaningful friendships or relationships that they need to live happily and normally. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is the problem that gets worse for the younger generation, especially after lockdowns where people have grown up on social media, hang out in person less, homeschool, go to college online, work remotely, date using apps, and generally skew towards hobbies that isolate them further. To put it simply, they spend less time with real people and therefore are less confident or capable people in face-to-face society, which is where they probably have the highest chance to meet people who are going to give them the things that they're missing in life and remove that loneliness. A lot of people nowadays have either grown up not learning how to socialize because of social media and the internet age, or they've forgotten, whichever one it is, they currently are not equipped with the tools to navigate the real world. You only have to look at cultures like Japan, where they literally have a word for this, ikikomori. We also have words in the West, neets, incel is obviously one that people throw around a lot when people are just, really bad at talking to women and, of course, are involuntary celibate. Losers, when people don't have friends and can't seem to get into good social situations. This is a problem that transcends barriers of culture. This is how you know it just exists and it's growing in popularity just due to the way that people interact with the world. This, of course, plays into the next problem, which is dating in 2023. Most people believe that due to the shift of society being online, there is no alternative to meet potential friends or romantic relationships without dating apps. Instead, they find themselves swiping on Tinder, where statistically and common sense dictates results are directly tied to one attribute and one attribute alone, attractiveness. Let's be honest, most of us are not that good looking, and on an app that is basically unhealthy fast food, of course people are going to pick the tastiest snacks. There isn't nutritional value there that they care about because they're there for a quick bite, and whatever looks the nicest is going to be picked. The common sense thing here is that this has nothing to do with women or men. Of course, the red pill does present it as such, where women only want a 6-foot-tall Giga Chad. This just has everything to do with the fact of the matter. If you show someone 10 people without any real indication of other redeemable or disqualifying traits, asking them to pick from the list using exclusively only their physical appearance, of course the result will mean the most attractive people get the most results. This leads to men becoming disenfranchised and thinking that women only want them if they're this thing that they are not, which essentially removes all of their responsibility in the situation, because what are they going to do? Grow taller, get more attractive suddenly? When you take the problem out of somebody's hands and their own ability to influence it, of course they're going to turn to things that are external and start blaming the people that are making these decisions, because they can't blame themselves, can they? Obviously, there is a factor that society has moved forward for women as well, giving them greater opportunities for careers and for pay. This has essentially killed the one main selling point every man on the planet had in the dating economy of old times, which is an income. Now men are required to bring more to the table than just a paycheck at a time when men seem more lost in their own value than ever before. Also, because of healthcare increasing, it means that women can have children later, so they're not rushed by biology to have children when they're very young, which means they're going to mature and make better decisions about which type of people they're going to have in their life for the long term. Now, is this the common man's fault? Sure, somewhat, a little bit, because everybody can change and they all bear responsibility for their own circumstances to an extent. But it's also just the way society now exists, and it's kind of happened without anybody really paying too much attention until the problem now exists. And realistically, it's not a question of right or wrong. All of this, and much more, leads to the bigger overall problem of why the red pill and manosphere has grown so exponentially. What do I mean? Well, in just about every walk of life, it's easier to blame something that isn't you. If you are this average unsocialized man who has little to no friends, no luck with the opposite sex, life's passing you by and you just don't know what to do about it, you've got no confidence, and your options for who to blame are yourself or society, chances are you're going to blame society. It's just easier to do. It's the self-defeating reality that if you do make the choice to blame society, it's going to change nothing about the circumstance and only send you down a path of manosphere, which is going to be further self-destruction. But that's what people are doing, whether knowingly or not. Now, of course, there are a million social stigmas of talking about problems or opening up emotionally to people, which for whatever reason is frowned upon as a man, but even less likely to happen since, again, statistically men these days have less friends, and with the growing manosphere influence, those friends are more likely to tell you to stop being a pussy and watch a video about Andrew Tate with Giga Chad music in the background, because of course that will fix all of your problems. Talking about them would be something only a beta male does. You obviously can't talk about it on social media either, because if I've seen anything about this, it's that people are just going to come in and say you don't deserve to have problems, because you're probably just a man. So of course, when nobody's talking to you, nobody's listening to you, nobody's really representing your problems, when somebody shows up who looks like they're in shape, who looks like they're a really masculine man, who's doing all the things that you want to do, who lives the life that you would love to live, and he's the only person talking to you, of course, you're probably going to listen. And these are just some of the factors that led us to where we are today. I'm sure there's going to be more, but I could be talking about this all day without addressing the next point, which is that the red pill is just capitalism and greed from lying narcissists who are LARPing as the saviors of young men, while instead just causing them harm. The advice they give is terrible for 97% of their audience, meaning that they're selling out the vast majority, and the 3% who wind up becoming wealthy following the advice will make the situation even worse for the other 97%. It's a toxic wasteland of a few useful pieces of life advice wrapped up in hate that will poison an impressionable man's brain into becoming a worse person, and therefore even less likely to ever find a woman who would want anything to do with them. Now, if there's something else the internet has taught me, hate is a very powerful tool. Once you recognize that the easiest way to build influence is to turn one group against another, you will see it in everything that people do online. Politics is probably the most prevalent one. It's us versus them. We are the righteous. They are the evil. Everything we do is okay. Everything they do is bad. If we do the same things, it's for good reasons, but they're doing it for bad ones. Every conflict is black and white. Why? Because it's easy and it feels good. The barrier for entry to this conflict is super low. It's way more accessible than any form of nuance would be, and it's easy to digest. It simply works. And that's exactly what the manosphere has done to convince these men who already were willing to believe things because they didn't want to blame themselves. They've told them it's team men versus team women. They use anecdotes of when a woman does something bad or wrong and pretend as if they're not anecdotes at all, that there can't be good women and bad women, like there's good men and bad men. It's just all evidence that women are built this way and they are the problem. So they're making everything simple by design. And I can't say for sure that all the people doing this are lying or grifting, but I can say that given enough time, each one of them gets caught living a contradictory life to what they tell their audience to live. Whether it's saying paying for sex is for losers and you shouldn't do that, and then being caught on sugar baby websites trying to find women to pay to hang out with.
You approached me on a sugar daddy website and asked me to be your sugar baby, and then
Never
couldn't
did.
afford my allowance.
Never did.
He couldn't afford my $10,000 allowance a month and said, haha, that's funny. Why don't you just come on my podcast instead?
Or saying sex workers like OnlyFans girls are the bane of society, and you're platforming them constantly, which results in their audience subbing to them and making them more successful. Or, of course, having those women on the podcast and having sex with them, yet calling them 304s, which is the red pill slang for hoes. Or maybe it's when they say that single mothers are used goods and they're worthless, but then get caught being married to a previous single mother who they lied about and said that her daughter was his niece, because he was just too ashamed to admit that he loved a single mother and her daughter.
I got a 13-year-old niece that stays here at least twice a week.
And so as we now look at her application on the screen and go to the section describing her household, it states, do you have dependents? Yes. Does dependent live with you? Yes. Dependent's age, 10 years old.
Or of course when they call out girls for being fake and having plastic surgery and using makeup, but then get hair plugs, liposuction, fake teeth, and use makeup on their own podcasts. Maybe it's saying that men should never settle for a girl who has had a lot of sexual partners, but sleeping with every attractive woman that they can.
A lot of girls are hoes. A lot of girls don't deserve a relationship. A lot of girls don't deserve marriage. And I know this is kind of controversial, but this is what I tell guys. I tell them you need to be at least 35 years old, have had sex with 50 girls.
Thus creating a world full of their alleged biggest problem and fucking up for all the guys they're supposed to be helping. The entire red pill space is basically rules for thee and not for me. Some of the funniest claims that you can disprove immediately, just if you've lived a real life at all, are that women are more than happy to let their boyfriend or husband cheat on them so long as that man is high value enough, meaning she will share her romantic partner out of fear that she couldn't get anybody so good, ignoring the fact that this person would then not be good to most women because they're not just out to use you as an ATM and live that life. This is not how adult relationships work with the vast majority of people. Essentially, the whole red pill seems to be a way to justify living the life of a teenage boy's dream, sleeping with a different Instagram model or OnlyFans girl every night, telling everyone who disagrees with the red pill that they are a beta male, blue-pilled soy boy. But this is a lie. The whole red pill is a lie. You only have to engage with the simplest concept to understand that. For example, these guys preach that the way to break free of all your problems is to become a high-value man, meaning that you're in shape and wealthy. The percentage of people who are in shape and wealthy is like 3% or lower. So by that definition, it cannot happen to 97% of their audience, meaning they're giving very specific advice to a very small number of people, but the vast majority of people are listening and it isn't solving any of their massive problems, it's actually making it worse. Maybe if you are a multimillionaire who's in good shape, you can treat women the way that they do. But the problem is that when the vast majority of their audience is hearing that advice and seeing how they live, and then they're treating women the same way, that's not helping them, that is hurting them. And since the title of this video will be something about how incredibly successful and profitable the business of exploiting lonely men is, let's look at how successful it is. Fresh and Fit is probably the biggest self-help guru red pill podcast, and they're pulling in tens of millions of views per month on just YouTube alone, which used to be, before they got demonetized, easily over $50,000 a month just in ads, without product placement, without donations from their fans, without having to go far to see just how low effort and low class this space can be in terms of the people that can pull in millions of views, earning hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions a year. I mean, just look at this dude. He's a VTuber of a low animated JPEG vampire who never shows his face, and his entire content is reacting to women on TikTok, telling his audience of bitter, angry, and lonely men that all the women on the videos are used up 304s who no one will ever love, and how it's all their own fault. It's basically not giving anybody advice, just a space to come where they can point at women and say, haha, that's your fault, you didn't love me, so it's good that you're upset and bad things are happening in your life. It's plain and simple people just feeling content to live in hate. In the real world, the solution to men's problems don't need all of this, and it definitely doesn't need all the conspiracy theories, anti-Semitism, racism, and other nonsense that gets platformed at the same time by all these podcasts and manosphere grifters. Obviously, I've acknowledged the problem is real, that there is a growing number of men who are really struggling with how to live their life. But there are things that they can do. And I'm also sure that these platforms or these people do sometimes give good advice, and people have made positive steps in their life due to that advice and would claim that they've been helped by Andrew Tate and the Red Pill and things like that. I'm not saying that that's not possible, but there's a limit to the advice that they're giving where it goes overboard into very, very unhelpful things. Of course, you should definitely go to the gym. You should eat right. You should sleep at a regular time for 8 hours if you can. Most importantly, you should find hobbies that put you in the real world with your peers. Work at socializing, find people who like the things that you do. And of course, treat people like they're individuals who deserve to start out with a blank slate of who they are and not with a list of preconceived and negative attributes that some guy on the internet told you were true while profiting from doing so. For every negative anecdote that you hear, you can also just find a positive one too. So this is actually a huge problem in society now, and if you were paying attention, you saw this coming a long time ago. Even before Andrew Tate showed up and accelerated the movement forward and into the mainstream, there were communities just full of hating women, like the Red Pill subreddit, the incel forums. These things existed and were growing exponentially in popularity. So where does all this end? Well, who knows? The issue is that this problem is yet again turned into another internet war where it's us versus them and people are drawing lines in the sand, not understanding that this mindset has gotten us nowhere close to solving societal issues and just reinforcing the positions of each other, making it easier for the people exploiting the male loneliness epidemic for their own gain, while making everything orders of magnitude worse for the people involved, who are essentially just the victims. So that's the insanely profitable business of exploiting the male loneliness epidemic. Thanks for watching.
Okay, fathers, protecting our daughters from misogyny. Like I said earlier, I personally researched over 300 videos from Black male content creators. Over 300 videos from Black male content creators because I'm a Black male. And I got to tell you, they're straight trash. And they're weak ass men. They're weak. The majority of the men that belong to the manosphere and red pill communities, they're weak ass men. They are. So fathers of daughters, grow dads, this is what you're up against. I needed to make this video, this live stream, to share with fathers of daughters, grow dads, so you can understand this is what's out there waiting for your baby girls, Gen Z, Gen Alpha girls. This is what's waiting for them. So if you are not a part of your daughter's life, birth to 18 years of age, you can only blame yourself if they end up in a situation or a crisis. It's on us, fathers, not their mothers. It's on us if we are not a part of their lives. All right, fathers, thank you for participating today. Thank you for being available today. Appreciate you all. I live stream once a week. This is, I believe, my 66th live stream since July of 2023. I'm consistent. I'm building my YouTube channel organically. I feel blessed. I really feel blessed, and I feel honored to be able to give back to fathers. So I'll continue to grind, fathers. This is what I do. All right, we'll have another live stream next week, fathers. Mis amigos, hasta la próxima semana. Paz. Adios. All right, fathers. Until next week, this is Ephraim B. Martin, Grow Dad YouTube channel. I'm out. Peace.